Right. Gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Revere Conservation Commission meeting, January 18th, 2023. To get started, for those that would like to, let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we'll do roll call. I see Brian Averback is absent. Robert Cassidy is absent. Nicholas Rudolph is here. Joseph LaValle
Here.
is here. And John Shu is here. So we have 5 sitting members, 3 as a quorum. All right, first up is review and approval of the meeting minutes from December 7th, 2022. Were there any changes needed?
Not at this time.
All right, if not, accept a motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes are approved. All right, so on the agenda, after the minutes, we have the continuation of notice of intent for 6 and 14 Beverly Street. They contacted me early this afternoon, and they want to push the continuation until our next meeting on February 1st to give them time to meet with the Site Planning Review Committee. So we will push that until then. Is there anyone here for that project? Didn't get the message. Good. And then to facilitate things a little bit, we're going to drop down to the notice of intent for Avon Street, DEP file number, which has not been issued yet. The City of Revere wants to install approximately 220 feet of drain pipe from Avon Street to the storm drain system on Bay Road. They're going to run it between a couple of houses in between. It's just underground PVC pipe. It's going to connect one drain to another drain. I was out there the other day with representatives from the city. It's pretty straightforward. The only reason we're here discussing it because it's new. So is there someone from the city? If you'd state your name and address.
Hi, Danielle Osterman, 281 Broadway. I'm the Community Development Program Manager for the city.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and open the hearing, but we will have to continue it, Danielle, until DEP issues a file number. And then we'll pick it up at the next meeting. Is there anything you want to add to the discussion for right now?
Nothing to add. Any questions you might have, I'm happy to attempt to answer them or relay them to the project engineer.
So what there is in front of one house is a wet or a dry well. It doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of fills up, and it takes a long time to percolate. So they're going to connect that dry well to the actual stormwater drain 2 houses back, and that will drain that whole area, improve stormwater drainage in that part. So, all right. So you're good with us continuing it? Okay. All right. Any questions from the audience on that? All right, moving on. Next up is I have a request for certificate of compliance for 320 Charger Street, DEP file number 061-0755. This is a big paved area over on Charger. where they're now storing rental cars. So, you state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance, office at 194 Central Street in Saugus, Mass. We did have a site visit this past weekend. This notice of intent was for the removal of the crushing yard that was there, construction of a retaining wall, construction of a rather robust stormwater management system, which is comprised of almost 1,000 linear feet of 36-inch perforated ADS pipe with a series of deep sump-ported catch basins that drain to particle separators, which drain to CDS water quality inlets prior to entering the infiltration system. So, as I said, the use is obviously, while maybe not ideal, it's certainly a significant improvement over the previous use. And hopefully the future will hold better uses for the site to come.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners? Yes, so Nicholas and I walked it down with the owner and Rick last Saturday. Looks pretty good. I've got the O&M plan.
Yeah, and we did submit the certification that they know that they've been executing the O&M plan, and we indicated that we will
Right.
continue to execute even after the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
And I got copies of the log from all the maintenance that's been done. I think I forwarded that to you folks. We have a statement from the engineer, the site's in compliance with all the drawings, so it looked good, and I recommend that we approve the certificate of compliance.
I just want to say that just as a point of privilege, through the chair, that it is a drastic improvement from what it was. The debris that was getting into the adjacent areas, that's well done, so.
Thank you.
All right. So entertain a motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good. Thank you. Next up is a notice of intent for 344 Salem Street, DEP file number 061-0791. This is construction of a 25-unit apartment within the buffer zone associated with a bordering vegetated wetland. Is there someone here going to speak on the project? If you state your name and address.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Nancy O'Neill, and I am an attorney located at 14 Proctor Avenue. I am here tonight on behalf of the applicant and property owner, Zapaj Development LLC. I am joined here tonight by the applicant, as well as the project engineer, Rick Salvo of Engineering Alliance.
So, thank you. I'm going to formally open up the hearing. All right, and then I'll continue.
So this project is located at 344 Salem Street and will entail the raising of the existing garage building and the construction of a new apartment building totaling approximately 22,000 square feet with approximately 16,000 square feet of unit area. There will be 25 dwelling units within the project to include 24 one-bedroom units and 1 studio unit. 50 parking spaces will be provided on site. The building is to be situated on an approximately 18,000 square foot lot, which is in an irregular, nearly half-moon shape. And due to the irregular shape of the lot, a dimensional relief was sought and granted by the ZBA at its hearing of October 26th, 2022, and the variances were granted by unanimous vote. And the appeal period for the variances has since lapsed. As was noted by the City of Revere in their ZBA letter of support, the project represents a considerable improvement over the previous use as a garage. This project will not only better align with the residential character of the neighborhood, but will also entail significant environmental benefit. The residential use will be more environmentally friendly than the garage use. Environmental issues arising out of the former garage use will be remediated. Overall, the project will be less intrusive to the neighboring wetlands and will significantly benefit the interests protected by the Commission. So I will now turn it over to our project engineer to discuss the technical aspects of the project, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance. So the subject property is comprised of about 18,000 square feet. It's bordered to Salem Street to the east, and then Clifton Street, kind of sort of a corner lot. The wetland resource areas were delineated by Bill Manuel. That consist of isolated wetland in the rear of the property, which was, likely caused from debris that had been pushed around in the past, as was evident with a lot of asphalt pavement that we saw piled in there, and also an intermittent stream that begins about midway up the property and flows in this direction under a culvert under Salem Street. It's an intermittent stream and doesn't qualify as a river under the Rivers Act, as the first test is it's shown on the USGS map as an intermittent stream. Under the regulations, that's not enough. You have to run a stream stat analysis. If the stream stat analysis shows that the contributing watershed area is greater than a half a square mile, at that point it becomes perennial. This particular site was less than a half a square mile, so it supports the delineation under on the USGS map as an intermittent stream. The site is currently comprised of the existing auto garage, which we saw had a lift in there. It's my understanding that the site has been tested and has a clean bill of health, with the exception of the area under the floor, which will be tested once the building is demolished. The rear of the portion of the site is sort of a hard panned gravel area that was used for the storing of motor vehicles. The proposal, and actually, just to put it into some context here, here's Salem Street, here's the large condominium building that exists to the west, the intermittent stream, and the isolated wetland resource area. The proposal is to construct a podium-style 25-unit apartment building. The majority of the parking will be inside the building at grade. There are a few surface spaces located in the rear of the site and the front of the site. All the paved areas have been designed so as to pitch away from the wetland resource areas. They'll be directed towards a deep sump hooded catch basin, then into a water quality unit, then into a subsurface infiltration facility. If I flip the page here, shown in blue here, this is the subsurface infiltration facility, which has been designed to mitigate all storms up to and including the 100-year storm. We did submit those calculations along with the notice of intent. We also included a section in the back side of the narrative, which basically indicates compliance with all the 10 standards of the DEP stormwater management regulations. So this system has been sized to infiltrate the roof of the area. Like I said, this area pitches to this catch basin, then to a water quality unit, then into that system. This area pitches this way into this deep sump hooded catch basin, to a water quality unit, into that system. Utility connections will be traditional water, domestic water, fire service, sewer service, connected to their respective mains in Salem Street. We will also be constructing a sidewalk along Clifton Street, where one doesn't currently exist, with granite curbing and cement concrete sidewalk. That's effectively the proposal. Like I said, this is a buffer zone project. Doesn't have any direct impacts to any wetland resource areas, just, has buffer zone impacts, but I think we've managed the stormwater sufficiently so as to not to create an improvement on the adjacent resource areas. So I guess with that, I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions or comments that you have.
All right. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick, you used the term stream. Can I assume that that empties someplace?
Yeah, it goes through a culvert under Salem Street and then keeps on going.
Ongoing into the marsh area, a lower area?
More than likely at some point, yeah.
East, I would say?
Yes.
And right now, except for the, I guess it was a garage that was there, the rest of it was all basically wooded area?
No, the majority of the site, this whole area of the site back in here is all kind of a hard pan gravel, and then from here back is wooded, but it's all been degraded in the past. There was clearly some dumping or some moving of earth that had gone on there. I don't know how long ago, but it was quite a long time ago, because the trees that had grown up through those piles were, at least this big around.
And my last question, so all this, after the building is constructed, all the drainage is heading into the street drains?
No, we're mitigating it all on site in a subsurface infiltration facility. So we don't contribute any stormwater to the street drains. As a matter of fact, we'll be taking stormwater flow out of the street drains that currently go there. So that'll create some additional capacity for the city.
It's just gonna leach through the ground?
Correct. It's a large system that has a big void, so it has a volume to be able to store it, and then it allows it to slowly infiltrate into the ground. So it's
How deep would you have to make that in order to have it effective? I mean, is it almost like a septic system? Do you have crushed gravel on the bottom?
That's a great analogy. It's very much like a septic system for drainage. So it's long rows of perforated ADS pipe, 24 inches.
Well, then I
long.
have to ask the next question. To that end, is real cold temperatures a problem to that?
No, because it's all surrounded in crushed stone. So what happens is the envelope gets excavated out, a filter fabric gets placed down, a layer of washed stone gets placed, then the pipes get placed on the washed stone, they get backfilled with the washed stone, filter fabric gets wrapped around it. So you don't get frost action in the stone, right? The stone can't freeze.
Any other questions?
After you do the demolition of the building itself, will you guys be providing records of remediation to make sure that the oil is clear, or is that a part of the?
We'll add that as a condition.
Yeah, I mean.
Just want to get that on.
Yeah, I mean, I know how it fits into the Wetlands Protection Act, but we're gonna have to do some form of testing there. I can't say right now whether there'll be remediation or not. Fingers crossed, everything's contained and there won't be any issues, but we will most certainly be happy to pass along the results of any testing and then whatever the appropriate measures are as a result of that testing.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I go to mine? The debris that's on the site, so we saw broken asphalt, we saw broken concrete, construction rubble, all that's gonna be removed?
Yeah, I think we talked about that at the site visit. I guess it's the pleasure of the board. We can put a note on the plan, or you can make it a condition in the order of conditions, whatever you.
I think, which means leveling those hills back there, because those mounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like we discussed out there, I think that's gonna be sort of an amenity space for the residents here, so.
All right. We saw a PVC pipe sticking up through the ground on the south side.
It was over here.
Were you able to confirm if that was a septic system or not?
No, but I'm pretty sure it was an old cesspool.
All right, so we're
We'll know
probably,
when we dig it up during
yeah,
demolition.
so we'll
and-
probably put a condition in to have that removed
Yeah.
and any drain field and.
Yeah, so there's and I guess, if the condition could reach, should an old septic system be encountered, Title V has a very specific
Yep.
procedure that they get abandoned, and we'll be forced to follow that.
I don't know if I wanna leave it abandoned.
Well,
Adjacent to the
removed.
stream, yeah.
Yeah. Typically, it gets pumped and crushed and filled with sand, clean sand and pumped
Yeah,
in
I've
place.
seen that,
Crushed
yeah.
in place
So-
is what usually happens.
Okay. Parking, it's all on grade?
All on grade. The majority of it is under the building, with the exception of 2 handicap spaces in the front, and then 2 spaces in the rear.
No ramps or elevators or shuttle pallet parking?
Everything's at grade.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's elevators obviously inside the building.
Right.
But as you saw out there, this is a relatively flat site, so ADA access wasn't an issue here.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you. I'm gonna open it up to the public. So for the public, you're welcome to come up one at a time and address the commission if you have any questions or concerns or suggestions. Remember, our jurisdiction is the protection of the wetlands and its resources, not on construction techniques, things like that. That would fall within the purview of the planning department in the city. So if there's anyone that would like to speak for or against or about the project, you're welcome to come up at this time. All right, hearing nothing. Last chance for the commissioners to ask any questions. Anything else you want to add? All right, so I think we have enough. A motion to close the hearing.
I'll make a motion to
I'll
that.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this hearing's closed. So, discussion?
I think I'm good at this
So,
time.
in addition to our normal special conditions, I would add a condition about this, in the event of a potential septic tank and drain field. And then removal of any existing construction debris and rubble and asphalt. Also, typical notifications if they find anything and they have to remediate. We would add those conditions. All right. I think we can vote to approve or not approve this. So take a motion to approve this order of conditions.
I'll make a motion to approve the order of conditions for Salem Street.
All in favor?
I'll second it.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Passes. All right, next up is a notice of intent for Agnes Avenue, tax map 2, block 71, lot 5A, DEP file number 061-0790, for construction of a single-family dwelling with a portion of the work to occur within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Have anyone here?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance.
All right, I'm going to formally open the hearing. Go ahead, Rick.
Here this evening on behalf of Ron Cavallo, who is the owner of the subject property. Again, we had a site walk last Saturday. This is a 60 by 60 lot, vacant at the present time. It's considered a qualified lot under the City of Revere zoning ordinance, which makes it a buildable lot. We've been to site plan review and got that indication from the site plan review board. The only resource areas present here are land subject to coastal storm flowage, which, as you know, under the Wetlands Protection Act, currently does not have any performance standards. The proposal is to construct a single-family dwelling 25 feet in depth by 35 feet in width. It'll be completely pile supported, much like the house that's built on the end of the street. This particular dwelling will be constructed with helical piles, so they'll be screwed into the ground rather than driven into the ground, so as to not be quite as invasive to the neighborhood. The lot coverage here is about 28%, which fits into the zoning requirement of the 30% lot coverage. The roof runoff will be infiltrated into a dry well. And like I said, the dwelling itself really won't have any impact on the resource area because it's going to be completely pile supported. So the only impact to the resource areas will be just the piles themselves, and also a small retaining wall in this area here, just to kind of create a flat grade under the dwelling for parking. So I know the commission was able to view the lot and see what was there. So I guess with that, it's a pretty straightforward proposal, single-family dwelling. So as you know, it's not subject to the DEP stormwater regs. However, we are proposing a dry well, which wouldn't even be required in a floodplain, but it's the prudent thing to do, so we added it into the plan. So I guess with that, I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions or comments that you have.
All right. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, Rick, could you give me a better description of these helical piles? I'm not familiar with them.
Think of it, it's like a giant screw. They get screwed into the ground.
Made of?
I believe they're made out of steel, right?
A diameter? I'm out of
I don't know,
curiosity.
has it been designed yet? Do you know?
It hasn't been, but they'll probably be 6 inches at the base and 4 inches for the post. And they are literally screwed into the ground to the refusal, the material that
Oh.
was.
You have to come up to
So-
the podium.
We can't, I noticed this the last meeting, you have to speak into the mic.
Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville, Mass., and I'm the proposed builder for this house. Helical piles are basically a galvanized steel screw system. They get screwed in sections, each section's 8 feet, and they have a screw at the end, and then there's a post, each post connects. They're drilled down to the what's called a refusal, which is the material which is supportable for the structure. The big advantage to them is there's no pounding, there's no impact on the neighborhood or the adjacent houses, so there's no concerns about cracking. It's essentially a silent process. We've used them a number of times, and they're very effective, and it's a great way to do this.
And in this area, what would the depth have to be?
We just had the testing done last week, about 33 feet. Yeah, 33 feet to the sufficient material to support the structure. And we haven't had it engineered yet, but there'll probably be 8 of them to support the structure. So it's a great system. It's the way almost all things are going these days. The old-fashioned pounding and wooden piles is becoming obsolete very quickly.
Thank you.
Sure.
So this is located right off of Broad Sound Avenue,
That's correct.
correct? I live right down the street from this location where this is going to be. Currently, it's just that empty lot with the metal fence around it, correct?
There's no fence around it.
It's not? Is this behind that?
It's an empty lot, though. There's a newer house at the end of the street.
Okay. Because I looked it up on Google Maps. I wasn't able to attend the walkthrough. But so is it going to, as far as the home, because it's very important to me living in that neighborhood that every home that's built or anything that is built is an improvement over what is there. Obviously, an empty lot isn't something that as a neighbor is great to have there. Will the standard of the building, it's going to be a small single family? Do you know how many bedrooms? Do you know how big as far as for?
Yeah.
Sure, fair questions. As of right, we can build a house that's 2,150 square feet. And we'll probably build a house that's about 2,100 square feet. It'd be contemporary, elevated on supports because we're in the floodplain, and contemporary, similar to the house that we built one street over. So it'll have a flat roof and a roof deck.
Okay, and then as far as for parking, is there going to be a garage as well?
There'll be parking, open parking under the structure, so water can flow through, but there'll be parking for 2 spaces, so.
So they won't impact the street, because it's very, the
correct.
street needs as much parking as possible on
That's
Broad
right.
Sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll have 2 spaces for a single-family home?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so no impact on the public way.
Any idea of when this would start being built?
Well, it's as of right, and we're close to completing the design stage now. I mean, we have a proposed design, but we don't have construction drawings. But I would say we would be ready to submit a building permit in 8 weeks.
And so far, there's never been any issue of flooding in that area that you're aware of, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm as
Sure.
someone who lives down the street to make sure this isn't going to have an impact on neighbors, as I'm a neighbor
Of
to this
course,
property.
yeah. I know that there's been flooding on Broad Sound, but this should not contribute in any way to the flooding on Broad Sound. I mean, it's designed, elevated, water will flow through. It doesn't increase water in any way. It doesn't really impact as an elevated structure on the adjacent street or neighbors.
Is it the neighbor that owns the land that's building it, or is it just someone who just owns the land?
The present owner has owned it for many, many years, and I'm the applicant, and once the building permit is issued, I'll purchase the property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it'll be up to your standard if you're going to be living there.
Well, I'm actually not going to live there. I'm building this house for resale.
Oh,
But yes, it'll be to a very high standard. The house that we built 1 street over sold for a very significant price. I think we broke a record in the city when we sold it.
Perfect. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One more question, either gentleman. Where does the drainage go now without the house there?
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
It flows in a westerly direction. This is the seawall right here. Okay. And then it flows this way, towards Broad Sound Ave.
And how will the house affect or is it being redirected? So this lot is higher than Broad Sound in elevation, you're right?
Yes, it's higher than
So it's
Broad
gonna pitch
Sound.
right down to Broad Sound.
So the impact of the dwelling, we're gonna infiltrate any water that comes off the roof. So it'll actually be a net decrease in the rate of stormwater runoff, although this lot isn't very big, so it doesn't contribute a whole lot of stormwater. But we will be infiltrating the roof. We will not be changing any drainage patterns, so it'll still be, higher on the westerly side and lower on the easterly side and drain in an easterly direction.
So just confirming, this is a right-to-build project?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been in the site plan review. I think, I don't know if we provided that letter, but we'd be happy to share the site plan review
Okay.
letter with you.
And then what's the height going to be? What's limited to?
The zoning limits the height of the building to 35 feet, and we'll be 35 feet to the roof line, and we'll be at 35 feet to the roof.
That's above grade, not above sea level?
That's correct, above the average grade,
Okay,
yes.
all right. All right, I'm going to open up for questions from the public who want to speak for or against or about the project. So if you want to come forward one at a time and address any questions or comments to the commission.
Christine McLaughlin, 18 Palmerton Terrace, Newton, co-owners of 166 Broad Sound Ave on Revere. I have some general questions. We've worked with this, seen this developer in the neighborhood for the previous development. So one of the questions I have is on the project narrative. They reference all these, the gradation of the land, 8 feet to 4 feet in the flow of the water flow. And they do not give any indication of what the north and the south is. We're on the south side, so I'd like to hear what impact grading this site would have on our property. And the other question I have has to do with, again, how it's the erosion and siltation control, what degree will decide when they build it up at the end, because that's important for us to know from the north to the south, because it would impact our property on the south.
Okay.
So
So-
through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer both of those questions.
Okay.
So the impact,
Do you mind just being able to make sure that she can just see that if, on the video camera, to have that zoomed in, or to just move it, just so she would be able to see what you're talking about? Thank you.
so Broad Sound Ave is over here on the westerly side. Stormwater flows from east to west. Put this over here. So there really wouldn't be any impact on the south side. All the stormwater is flowing in this direction in the current condition, and in the post-development condition would continue to flow that way. We did submit an erosion control plan, so the site will be staked with double-staked hay bales and siltation fence prior to construction, so that any disturbance of the land will keep any fines, any silts on the subject property, will not allow them to flow off-site onto any abutting properties.
And that silt control plan was pretty much around the whole perimeter, right?
Correct, except for the high side,
Except for the high side,
because
yeah.
water doesn't flow.
Because that's, water's gonna,
Yeah, it's gonna flow this way.
and that was 2 stages. It was bales staked and
Correct.
silt.
Along the
Fabric.
south side, along the westerly side, and then along the northerly side.
Right.
There is no siltation proposed along the easterly side, because it's the high side of the lot. There's no possibility for anything to flow off-site there.
And then I guess the other question was, the grade isn't really changing when construction's done.
No, the house is gonna be elevated on piles. It'll be up in the air, just like the house at the end of the street.
Only other question I had was, what does the right to build project permit mean?
So the city of Revere has zoning requirements, and those zoning requirements indicate what sizes and shape lots are eligible for building permits, just through the building department, without having to go through the Board of Appeals. This is a qualified lot, under the city of Revere, zoning ordinance. We went through a site plan review and had that confirmed, through the site plan review chairman.
Basically, if an owner of a lot applies for a building permit, typically if they're not asking for any variances and what he wants to build is zoned and he meets all the requirements, they have a legal right to build that structure. If you want to,
I'm a little confused because we went through zoning before, and he had an application in, this developer, and there was a lot of objections. There was 7 variances asked for to build up this site, so I'm not sure how we went from that to just get a special permit. I don't understand that.
It's my understanding, and I wasn't really involved at that stage of the project, that Mr. Cavallo's attorney went to the Board of Appeals because he thought he needed a variance. He didn't realize that the qualified lot provision in the zoning applied to this property. It does, in fact. We met with the building commissioner, we met with the site plan review chairman, and they indicated that it was in fact a qualified lot and did not require zoning relief. That's why the application was withdrawn.
hello, state your name and address, please.
Michael Morgan in 5 Agnes Street, direct abutter to the east of the proposed drawing. And my question is, on the application, it says an 875 square foot dwelling. So he just said a 2,150 square foot dwelling. That's an awful large mistake.
Two stories.
So it says, the proposed proponent proposes to construct an 875 square foot single-family dwelling. So what's the 875 square foot?
I believe that's 25 times 35.
That's the
That's
outer
the footprint.
footprint? Okay. Because we did not receive any of this. It was, none of this stuff came to us as a direct abutter, so kind
So
of just
it-
getting an advance to review this now. It was never said to us.
So it wouldn't, you should have received a notification, and in that notification, it directed you to contact the city to get copies of this, which are available for review.
Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you.
Just for information, that did not happen. The notice was to contact the city, and when we called the planning department or community development department, did not get a call back. And it was only by calling the regional DEP that I found out about this commission's process and found out how to get information, which I appreciate as an abutter. But I don't think anyone else had the same opportunity or information. It just didn't flow. It was very quick last week. We got notified, and here we are.
So, I'm looking at the notification, and it directed people to call the Revere Conservation Commission.
Yes, the phone that we call, the phone number, doesn't come to that, and it goes to community development, doesn't
Oh,
come
the
to-
8185 number?
Yeah, goes to community development. Doesn't come to the 8181
Right.
that I used to call you. I had to get that from the regional.
So, but you did get me.
I did, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
okay,
that.
okay.
Thank you.
We need to check your number. Are there any other?
I am Bob McLaughlin, 18 Palmerton Terrace, West Newton, and also co-owner of adjacent lot. And I just want to make sure you, as a neighbor, the lot that you described with the fence around it is not where the house is going, that Ron's talking about. So the lot that you're talking about, you see a wire fence, and then behind it, there's a house.
Behind that house, right behind that house.
So, right, so between that house and his, which is up at the seawall. So you should look at the lot. And then the only other thing I'd like to say is I just want to make sure there's some way for us to verify that the variances were fulfilled, because it is a very different story than what we heard before the request for a permit was pulled before.
Okay. I will get a copy of the site plan review committee letter,
Okay,
and it should have all that information in there, and I'll send that to you.
great, thank you.
Okay? Are there any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close this hearing. All right, for discussion, any comments from the commissioners? Any?
I'll make a comment just as a neighbor, I understand. I will just say that I've seen the work that he has done before, and it is really good work when it comes to a property. If I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't want that in our neighborhood. So when it comes to voting, a lot of the times, to me, it's important if it's gonna make the neighborhood better. 100% completely understand where you're coming from for not wanting more water coming towards your property, obviously. The one thing that I think is a benefit for both of us, since I'm on the other side of it, is there's that water plant that's right there. So if anything does come, as you're driving down Broadtown right by there, they have in the middle of the street, the areas where the water is gonna flow. I've lived on Pierview Ave for a little over 6 years. I've yet to see one time where that area flooded through huge storms because of that being there. So it comes down to, as a Conservation Commission, obviously that being a big part of it to make sure from a water perspective, but even in the back of my head as a neighbor, seeing if that's gonna benefit the neighborhood as far as financially us looking better. And we've had a lot of empty lots and a lot of things in that area that could improve. So I do hope that if it matches the standards that they have, that it'll be beneficial to all of us. But I completely understand why you would be here today, and I appreciate that all of you came.
This is for the, for Cavallo and company. At what phase of the project will the dry well be installed to kind of mitigate some of these concerns about runoff on the property?
I'm sorry, if you could clarify the question for me?
So you're going to be providing a dry well on the property,
Oh,
not
I'm sorry.
required by the standard, but as
No,
best practice?
I thought you said drywall. Now I understand. Right at the early stages, it makes sense to put it in initially, which is what we typically do. Yes, so early on.
So, and that could maybe alleviate some of the concern about runoff from the property.
Yes.
Sure.
So being as close as we are, will the soil report be available? So when they do the report for the drilling, because this loosens up, it's all organic material down there. I had to do a report myself, and that's why we had to put piles in. So I would, when that becomes available, is it viewable to the public, the soils report on that? So you know with the structure of the soil? And I could like review it or have someone review it if that could be loosening up the soil significantly in that area?
Yeah, so that's not in our purview.
Okay.
Our jurisdiction, we're really there to protect the resource under the Wetlands Protection Act, in this case, the land subject to coastal flooding. The construction technique, all of that would be under the purview of city planning
Okay.
and zoning and permitting.
Okay, no, that's why I wanted to ask that, you
That
know.
said, you know, if you have a relationship with the neighbor, you might ask them directly. But it's not something that we would get.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you again.
Mr. Chairman, just as a point of information, so all that information would have to be submitted to the building department as part of the building permit process. That's all public record, so it would all be available. All you have to do is go down to the building department.
If I could also add, the big advantage to helical piles is that they're absolutely low impact. It's really, really a great system. And I actually, because we just had the borings done to analyze the soil, they told me, as I said earlier, that they hit refusal at 32 feet, which is very typical. It's what we hit it for the adjacent house, which is not all that deep, fairly typical for soil conditions of this type. So again, the big advantage is there's no impact on the adjacent properties. It's essentially a silent process, and the equipment used is minimal. It's quite amazing. And because the helical piles connect to each other in sections, there's no large, I think each section is just 8 feet. There's no large steel beams or large sections of steel being brought to the site. It's all modular, and each piece interconnects, and they go as deep as they need to. The equipment tells you when you've hit the proper material. The equipment will give you a reading that says you're at the proper material to support the structure. So it's really a great system.
Typically, those types of structures were relying on side friction as
Right.
you're screwing it in, shear loads of the soil, so they don't work too well in sand.
That's right.
You're really not relying on the point of refusal at the bottom to support the weight. It's mostly all on the sides.
Right. Suction too.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put them in clay and
Yeah.
have it work, so, yep.
Any other questions?
Because we've dealt with this development before, who will we deal with the building so that we have a contact if there's issues at the building site?
Do you know who?
Who
Who?
would that be?
Can you, who?
Louis Campagnaro?
Oh, Lewis,
Louis?
the building inspector guy, right?
Building commissioner. All right,
I can get you that name. I have
that'd be
it.
helpful. And
Yeah.
a phone number, thank you.
Okay. All right. So the hearing's now closed officially. Any special conditions or anything that you think might be needed other than our normal?
Well, I mean, they did say that they were gonna do the dry well early on in the process.
Right.
So I think maybe adding that as a condition, since they already said they're gonna do it, but just to have it as a condition, I think
So
would
it's
make
in the
sense.
drawing, and we typically refer that they permits based on the drawings submitted and built per this. So, yeah, and then I will add a special condition about maintenance of that dry well over a long period of time.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, excuse me, one other question just occurred to me. A parking area, what do you intend to have for a pavement there?
Actually, no pavement. It'll be a permeable material, probably crushed stone, that will grade and compact under the house, so there'll be parking for 2 cars under the house. It's generally what we find most conservation commissions want, and I'm certainly fine with it, if the commission is.
The only reason I mentioned that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to have breakaway walls on this too. So there's gonna be a flow, or whatever you're going to have, it's gonna be open.
Yes, open, no,
So in the case of water flowing down, and it's open, I'm wondering if the crushed stone will get carried around.
no, we've
Well,
built in floodplains a number of times, and it's very important that you use the right stone and you compact it properly. And it would have to be, a really horrific event to move the stone. Plus, the stone is under the structure, and it's largely protected by the structure. And again, if you use the correct stone and you compact it properly, it really won't go anywhere, but it will absorb, and it will be permeable and allow water to go through it if it does get wet. But most of the water is controlled, most of the water is going to be from the roof, and that's going to be controlled through the downspouts and into the dry well.
Have you considered either hydraulic cement or pavers?
We've done pavers. We've been very successful with crushed stone. We've used pavers at the mouth of the access to the parking, and that's more for cosmetic reasons. It also can prevent stone from going into the public way, which is a good thing. But we do things, we use curbing, not pavers, but cobble, and we'll do an opening with cobble and leave a lip so that the stone is controlled. But what's important is that you use the right crushed stone so that the tires don't use what's called, driveway crush, which is a specific diameter so that tires don't pick it up and kick it into the street. And it's very effective. I have it in my own house in the city, and it stays where it's supposed to.
So,
Does that answer the question?
yeah, you do have on the drawing a pavement or concrete.
Paved apron.
So I will put in the conditions, it'll be some permeable surface.
Sure. I mean, typically, we would use cobble. Yeah.
I'll put a permeable surface, it'd be crushed stone, cobble, pavers.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any other considerations? Are we ready to vote on this? All right, a motion to approve an order of conditions?
Motion?
Second it?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Passes. I will send you the information. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Rick. And if you have any questions during the process, just, you have my email on that, and I can figure out who to direct you to if I can't. So, all right. Last up is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 190 Veterans of Foreign Wars Highway. This is the Wonderland racetrack site. So this is for confirmation of jurisdictional boundaries of bordering vegetated wetlands, non-bordering vegetated wetlands, the bank mean annual high water line, riverfront area, and bordering land subject to flooding and land subject to coastal storm flowage. I think is.
Good job, that was a good one.
You like that?
That was good.
Yeah. This is in support of the project for the new city's high school. We do
Commissioner-
not have a DEP file number yet. Correct. So I can open the hearing, and then we'll have to just continue it. All right. So,
Is this the first time that the high school project has been brought before the commission?
yeah, as part of the long-term permitting process, yes. The project, the location has been before the commission previously. Yeah, yes, for the high school. All right, so I'll officially open up the hearing. If you state your name and address.
Sure. Claire Hogaboam, wetland scientist with LSC Environmental Consultants, address 12 Resnick Road in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Great. So I guess your audience is whoever's, oh, let's redo that then.
There we go. Okay.
All right, redo
I'll
that.
start over. Okay. For the record, Claire Hogaboam, wetland scientist with LEC Environmental Consultants, addresses 12 Resnick Road, Plymouth, Massachusetts.
All right. So your audience is, I've been pretty involved in this with other meetings. So the audience of the commission here and whoever's watching on Revere TV and YouTube.
Great. So with that, I'll just start off with sort of going through the resource areas, and I just want to give you guys sort of a perspective of the site. I imagine everybody's pretty familiar with the Wonderland site, previously occupied by the Wonderland Greyhound Park. On the plan before you, we have the site located here, and this sort of dashed line work is where the former racetrack is located. We have the north arrow, so just keep an eye on that when we're going through the sheets and talking through it. But we have the MBTA commuter rail line just here on the top of the plan set. We have North Shore Road along sort of the northeastern portion of the project limits. This is Butler Circle here, the rotary that, I don't know if you guys have driven through that pretty regularly, but can get quite crazy. And then the VFW highway is located here, and the Wonderland MBTA parking lot is just on the opposite side of North Shore Road here. So just to provide a little bit of background on the site itself, again, formerly the Wonderland Greyhound Park, which was occupied by the dog track located here, clubhouse and various buildings just adjacent to that. The remainder of the site was generally paved parking, still is to a certain extent. The northern 1/3 portion of the site is bifurcated by the Eastern County Ditch, which is a perennial stream. It's indicated as such on the USGS map. So we are considering it a perennial stream. We are seeking all confirmation of all the resource area boundaries that the chairman has listed. I will wait until the end to remind everybody of what they are. I'm sure I'll be going through all of them as I go through the plan sheets as well. The Wonderland Park closed down in 2010, and the buildings on the park location were all demolished between 2017 and 2019. So currently the site is occupied by remnant pavement, remnant foundation, and a lot of opportunistic invasive species are colonizing in the pavement, either on top or out of the cracks in the pavement. And as I'm sure you're aware, driving by the site, it's generally has been used for miscellaneous activities over the years, but is relatively vacant for the time being. Before we conducted a site visit out there, we reviewed some of the files with the Conservation Commission, and the most recent filing that we found was an ANRAD application seeking confirmation of resource area boundaries that was approved through an Order of Resource Area Determination, or an ORAD, that was issued in 2018. And that ultimately confirmed the bank mean annual high water and bordering vegetated wetland boundaries associated with the Eastern County Ditch. And it also confirmed the elevation of bordering land subject to flooding and land subject to coastal storm flowage. That has since expired, so that's sort of what's bringing us before you here, in addition to some other resource areas that we are depicting on the plans today as well.
Did that previous order identify anything with regards to the center of the racetrack?
I don't believe it did, and from what I understand, it was kind of hard to tell from the plans whether they specifically excluded the dog track from that ANRAD application, or if there was just a different determination at that time. Just wanted to look through my notes to make sure I covered everything there, and I think I did. So, I'm just gonna sort of scan through the sheets to start explaining resource areas one by one, but ultimately we have 4 sheets, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Or I got that wrong, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll just be going through them, but ultimately first I'm gonna start talking about this Eastern County Ditch on the site. So, the Eastern County Ditch, this is the MBTA commuter rail line up here. So we have the Eastern County Ditch right up to the property line here, and it's confined within a very linear, abrupt, uniform embankment. And as you can see, I tried my best to color code and keep blue and green a little separate for everybody, but generally the bordering vegetated wetland boundary is fringing along the mean annual high water and bank boundary to the stream. And it just continues onto this next sheet. So again, for reference, we have the MBTA line up here. And this is Dunn Road, which is a public roadway that sort of extends into the site a little bit. You'll see that the stream continues, and we do have a culvert here. I believe it's a 54-inch diameter corrugated metal pipe. There was also a bridge crossing somewhere on the end of the plan sheet there as well. But you'll see that the wetland system does fringe very closely along the stream channel, with exception to this area where it does extend up closer to Dunn Road. And then just continuing further sort of northeast towards North Shore Road. This is where the ditch continues to the northern portion of the site and flows off the site through twin culverts, continuing subsurfacely under Sagamore Street in the residential neighborhood there. It continues across North Shore Road just off the plan set, and it daylights again at the MBTA Wonderland parking lot across North Shore Road. We do have a little finger-like extension of BBW that occurs along the property boundary there that is pretty consistent with the 2018 approved ORAD as well.
It's up against a fence, right?
Exactly, yep. There's sort of like a swale depression that it follows within that portion of the site. And then again, this is sort of where all of this is, pavement, remnant gravel. A lot of cars are parked there in the US for parking there. So we got through the stream channel. Now I'm just backtracking to the southern portion of the site here. And I'll talk about the non-bordering vegetated wetlands that we identified. So we have a large system that's interior of the former dog track. And the dog track itself is an elevated feature, so within it, it's ultimately a depression there that's around elevation, I think, about 3 to 4, 3 to 5. And the track itself is upwards of elevation 7 or 8. We identified the non-bordering vegetated wetland interior. Through site evaluations and evaluating the survey data as well, we confirmed that there are no connections to any upgradient or downgradient jurisdictional wetland resource areas, which ultimately confirms that it is in fact an isolated feature. Just south of that, we have these 2 other non-bordering vegetated wetlands identified as a C and D series wetland system. our C-Series wetland, both of them actually are within an area that, based on historic aerials, has been subject to consistent land use and ongoing site activities for many, many decades. And the C-Series wetland itself is within what appears to be an excavated depression that could have resulted from that land use. And that wetland in particular is in quite degraded condition. There's an abandoned encampment there, a lot of extensive debris and rubbish around that. We have a photo within our report that shows as much. And the smaller system here is located within a more subtle topographic slope there. So generally, both of those wetlands appear to be quite small. I think the C-Series itself, let's see, the C-Series here is just over 2,000 square feet, and the D-Series here is about 819 square feet, so they are quite small. The fourth non-bordering vegetated wetland, we're back on the Dunn Road sheet. It's just this little orange linear feature, and that's a small swale that we observed along, there's sort of a paved, sort of gravel portion of Dunn Road. It appears that it's just resulted from stockpiling, consistent land use, receiving overflow from Dunn Road. That again is another small area, just about 450 square feet itself too. So what our application is asking confirmation for from the commission is the jurisdictional status of these non-bordering vegetated wetlands due to the ongoing land use and the degraded nature of these wetlands. And you know, they ultimately provide a very limited amount of limited functions and values that are intended for protection under the ordinance. So our request is to confirm with you all the jurisdictional status of those areas. In addition to that, the small size of the three that I just went over, the F-Series here, and then back on this previous page, the C-Series and the D-Series, just based on the small areas and the amount of volumetric capacity they have, we believe they do not meet the criteria for isolated land subject to flooding, so we're also seeking confirmation of that as well. I think that covers it for the non-bordering vegetated wetlands. One thing I do want to backtrack on, because I realized I forgot to mention it, was with the Eastern County Ditch, just backtracking to the fact that it's a perennial stream. We do have the 200-foot riverfront area extending from that as well. I don't believe it's on the plans currently, so knowing that we're not closing tonight, that's absolutely something we would intend to include on revised plans before finalizing the review. The last resource area I would like to bring up is the bordering land subject to flooding and isolated, or bordering land subject to flooding and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Niche Engineering is the project engineer on this, and they are currently reviewing the previous calculations from the 2018 ANRAD, which seeked confirmation of that as well, and they provided calculations there that ultimately confirmed that bordering land subject to flooding, or in other words, inland flooding, reached elevation 5, and land subject to coastal storm flowage continued up to elevation 12. So Niche is confirming that through cross-checking that information, analyzing the existing topographic data that was collected by our surveyor for these plans, along with the FEMA flood insurance study. And we didn't initially provide that information, but that we do intend to provide that along with this application to get confirmation of that. So just to round it all out and bring this one home, we are requesting the confirmation of boundaries of bordering vegetated wetlands, non-bordering vegetated wetlands, bank mean annual high water line associated with the Eastern County Ditch, the 200-foot riverfront area, and bordering land subject to flooding and land subject to coastal storm flowage. We are also seeking the confirmation of the protectable status of the 3 non-bordering vegetated wetlands under the ordinance. We are also seeking confirmation that they do not meet the criteria for isolated land subject to flooding. And lastly, which I didn't mention until now, but we are requesting that the commission show the determination of mitigation requirements under the ordinance for any potential future alterations to the non-bordering vegetated wetlands. So with that
When you say
overload-
ordinance, which ordinance?
The Wetlands Protection
Yeah.
Ordinance, Section 16, I believe.
Okay. All right, the city's ordinance.
Yeah.
So,
That was a lot.
it's a lot.
That's certainly a lot to unpackage.
And what some of this means is if we extend or don't extend protection to some of these small wetland areas, what they can do with it.
Can I like ask a point of information here? What is the ultimate drainage of this Eastern County ditch? Where does it finally end up?
That's a great question, and that is one that we were chasing around ourselves, and I wish I had a.
I think it goes to Diamond Creek. Does it go to Diamond Creek?
That's what we're thinking, I think it does, so, just right here on the site is where it discharges and it kind of continues in this direction. And we got the MBTA parking lot where it daylights again, and it does sort of meander around town and it ends up in the Rumney Marsh. So yeah, it does ultimately, it's a tributary to Diamond Creek. Probably, I think we had it in our report where that ended up, but I think it might be, about a half
think it's-
mile north of the site.
Yeah.
Is your company designing or building the high school?
We are a part of the project team, and we're the wetlands consultants, so we're not necessarily in like a building design capacity of that, but we are on the team to work with everybody to confirm, affirm that wetland resource areas will be protected and will be adequately mitigated in any project design.
And do you know what percentage of the land that's there for Wonderland will be utilized by the high school?
I do not know that answer right now.
Because from what I've read stuff obviously about this, because huge news of building
Oh,
this
yeah.
giant high school. I was wondering what percentage of it, because there's obviously 100% being everything. I heard it was going to be 50 or 60% of the land. I was wondering what was happening with the other percentages.
Well, for certain, I think the confirmation of the jurisdictional status of those non-bordering vegetated wetlands, and the mitigation requirements that the commission would request on those would be, a part of the design as far as what other portions of the site would be utilized for. Of course, there's a big stormwater component with the site as well, so when we come before you with a project in the future, I'm sure you will be seeing a lot of stormwater management as well. So again, it's just something, I think a lot of the plans, there have been a lot of things thrown around, and when it does come time for us to finalize a specific layout for the project, if you'd like, we'd be happy to have a more,
Well, they'll
a preliminary meeting
They'll have
to,
to do that with the
Yeah.
NOI
That was
anyway.
actually one of my next questions, was about the timing. So obviously this is gonna be something that takes a long time to be built, but as far as that it's in the staging aspect of it now, do you have any kind of an idea of how long until there's more of a formal plan that would be presented to the commission? Cause it just sounds like this is obviously trying to figure stuff out at this meeting, which is great. I mean, obviously you have to do
Yeah.
that. But
So what this does, whatever we decide, so if they have to move and, bulldoze over a wetland and then try and move that someplace else on the site, or they have to provide compensatory storage, whatever we just come up with and approve, that determines their design.
no, absolutely, I understand.
So
I was just trying to
they
get an
have
idea
lots
of
of
the
different
timing.
designs
Yeah,
depending.
I
Yeah,
was just
so
wondering overall timeline.
it's a hard question to answer at this point.
Totally
but
understand. I just
it-
didn't know if you already had the
It
answer.
definitely is dependent on sort of the determination of the ORAD and where we end up with the resource area boundaries. appreciate that.
So this is pretty complicated. There's a lot in this.
Well, I can tell from what you had to read at the beginning.
Yeah, this is out of my domain, in a lot of respects. And so what I'm recommending is that, we approve the hiring of a consultant to do a peer review, where we can ask, questions, get recommendations. They'll review all of this. We'll get a chance to rewalk the site and look at all the flagging, things like that. They'll come back, they'll give us a report, they'll make a presentation at a meeting, and be that kind of a process.
I think that's a great idea.
So it's the first time we've done this, that I've done it. I've already, this afternoon, I did request a quote. But we need to approve the expenditure, even though the city is gonna pay for it.
I'm shocked to find out we have the ability to have a consultant. I haven't heard that for 20 years.
Really?
Well, this project is so massive, we have to make sure we do this,
We
you know,
wanna do it
as
the right
perfectly
way.
as possible.
I've gone through the report in detail, I've walked the site. But there's a lot of eyes looking at it, and I think in the interest for the public, making it as visible as possible, transparent, we'll do a peer review, we'll get a lot of our questions asked and answered, and I think we can make a better decision. There's a lot of things on this site I wouldn't save. It's a result of neglect over a whole lot of years. There's one little strip of isolated wetland growth, a
Yeah.
little pink thing there.
The site is a pit. I think we can openly just say the site is a
Because
pit.
along there are mounds of, looks like, again, old asphalt and construction rubble. I'd like to see all that go away, clean the site up, best abilities, but this is all part of
The area north of the ditch, that green area, I think it's green. Yeah, that is natural to the area. That's not something that's over the years just been reduced to that, because the area that's adjacent to it, I can't tell what that is on the plans, actually.
You're talking about this here, what you can't tell what this is, or?
That's residence.
So it's very interesting. In our report, we provided a lot of historic aerials. We went back, I think, to 1935 was the first one that I could find. And back then, there actually were homes or structures along Dunn Road, even in this location. And I forget exactly which year it was, but after the homes and after the structures were all demolished and removed, this did start establishing as a wetland, and you could see from sort of indicators on that aerial that it started naturally developing. It's hard to tell if it's something that was excavated to function as that, if it always was that. But, that is more of there are still, obvious and abrupt topographic changes that define that wetland. But it is hydrologically connected with the stream itself. It's not really like much of an isolated feature, with the exception there is this little strip right here that you see the green going along, and that's sort of an elevated berm that we excluded from the delineation. So there is still evidence throughout of the historic use of the site.
It's just it's a substantial plot that would be something that, I think that we might want to consider saving, comparatively speaking to
You need
the,
to go look at it and see what the quality of it is. It could be that we move it somewhere else. I think it's created, again, over neglect and time, either through excavation or mounding of other things, where water's been redirected there and just sat. And, we're not gonna do much with the ditch.
That land has been so mistreated for so long that I think as even they start working and things, they're gonna find stuff they weren't expecting either.
Absolutely.
Well, in any plan that is formulated for the building of this high school, that ditch is going to be probably culverted and either built over, or it's gonna be, well, that's what happened in the high school that's standing now. There's a culvert that goes right underneath that building right now and empties on the other side of the road where Toll is, or was. Well,
I
yeah,
haven't
so,
seen anything about putting it into a pipe. There might be a bridge that goes over it, but
For any iterations of the project we've been working on, thus far, the intention is to avoid and minimize impacts to the stream to the extent that we can. So, ultimately, like a full culvert of that stream we would prefer to avoid that.
so you don't think the building would even extend to those areas?
I think at this point, the last iteration, or, you know, what we've been seeing posted on the website for the school, it's generally located somewhere in this portion of the site.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, moving or culverting of the stream is something that, you know, we're attempting to avoid in design.
Now, but you need that whole area to be designated as part of this project because there's a square foot restriction for how big the property has to be to build a high school of a certain size, correct? No?
I'm not sure about the square footage of the site and what's required for the site development, but in terms of, you know, getting the Eastern County ditch approved through this ANRAD process, you know, it's important to understand the square
Well-
footage and amount of riverfront area on the site because,
Could they be field areas, baseball, soccer, whatever, is that?
I think that's something that the school committee would very much like. And yeah, again, when the project sort of becomes fine-tuned, once we get the wetland boundaries approved.
In any
that's
event,
something
whatever
we can
happens,
bring
the
before you.
the ditch is still going to be there, basically. That's why I was asking. Yeah, okay.
yeah, so I think in our bylaws, we have to vote on approving the expenditure of money, even though it's ultimately the city's money. That allow me, I've asked for a quote from a consultant. He'll provide the quote. Once I get that, and then I send a letter. I'm gonna send a letter to you or to the city, to both.
You could send it to me and then,
But basically,
involve-
it'll have the amount,
Yeah.
and then they'll have 10 days to provide a check to you. And then that check gets deposited in an escrow account, and then we can draw against that to pay the consultant, and anything left over goes back to the city.
So, motion to approve consultant, is that what it would be?
Yes,
Motion?
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So we're gonna go down that road. Hopefully, we can get this all done and reconvene the hearing for March 1st, maybe?
March 1st is the next meeting date?
So the next meeting date is February 1st?
Oh, okay.
That's only 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. So our next meeting date after that is March 1st.
Is it reasonable to ask that the commission consider if you would be able to approve the peer review fee and sort of give authorization to the peer reviewer to move forward with their work without having to wait for the next meeting? You know,
That's what I just got.
that's what we got through.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So you guys have given me the ability to go out, engage a consultant, approve that, and, yeah.
I'm just looking at the weather forecast and,
Yeah, so I should hear something tomorrow.
Okay.
And then we'll get the letter out, and then as soon as the city provides a check, then we can engage the consultant.
great.
All right, so we'll continue this.
Yep, a
Right.
continuance, and I suppose, like you said, so instead of February 1st, the March 1st would
Yep.
be the best date to continue this to.
Yeah, yeah,
Then request to continue to March 1st.
great. Thank you.
Thank you
And
all.
you guys, there's full set of drawings down there, if you're interested in them. You have it electronically. It's a pretty good primer in, wetlands.
Every resource area.
Yes, yes. thank you very much for waiting and being last. I didn't know if there'd be more people here for you or not, but,
It was a nice presentation.
great.
Thank you all, I appreciate it.
And I think that's a full set, Joe. You take the whole set. There's a couple more sets here if you need them. All right, real quick. We have a site visit coming up on 801 Washington Avenue, which is up in North Revere. They're building an apartment building. And the thing is Pine River goes right through there. So, that site visit will be a week from Saturday. Yeah, because 801 Washington Avenue, I think. So we have a Washington Street and a Washington Avenue. It's the Washington that's way up in North Revere on the other side of US 1. You know where it is? Do you live there? Okay. I haven't set a time yet, but is 9 o'clock okay? Yeah. You guys saw the correspondence, just basically courtesy notifications for gas line projects in the city. So for the next meeting, we'll have 6 and 14 Beverly Street. They'll be coming back. The engineer did make a proposal. They did some drilling on that property. They found a layer of loam. And the water table is like near the surface, but that loam inhibits interaction of water on the surface to get down below. So he's come back up a proposal to add a dry well and to pierce that loam, add a dry well and improve the interaction of surface water with groundwater.
Do they indicate why they hit that layer of loam, or what?
It's just the makeup of that area. And they're gonna go to site plan review, so they'll be back presenting on that. I think that's the two big things, and then plus the high school thing's kicking off.
Firehouse, we got the Suffolk Downs, we got the.
I know, there's a lot of,
I got all excited. I saw vehicles parked at the site for the firehouse. Then I found out it was only because they were using it to put in a gas pipeline.
oh,
I'm not sure what the.
Actually, they said 2026, so
yeah.
it's not gonna happen anytime soon.
See,
I know, it's so ridiculous.
you know, it's gonna take longer than the Fox Hill Bridge.
So if there's anything I need to do to keep you guys better informed, let me know.
The only thing for me is just emails for the site visits. If you can even just do like confirmations, I missed, I missed, that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I go right to my computer, but I missed it by a day and they came too late. I
Yeah.
read it Saturday afternoon.
yeah, I mean, I think I sent, it was in the agenda, that came out a week in advance, or the week, 3 or 4 days before, and then I sent another notice out on Friday afternoon. But yeah, typically the Saturday before this meeting is when and if you don't see anything and you know something's coming up, hit me up. I'm trying to keep you guys informed on that. We will have a site walk down for Wonderland. So, weather depending. We'll probably wait till the consultant comes on board and then we'll go out there one afternoon with him.
Maybe even after the consultant gets a chance to go out there too. is what I'm saying.
But yeah, he needs to go out there first and do his thing, yeah. All right, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned.